Welcome to Jamie's Vinyl Hideaway. On my last show, I did Mazzy's Whack-A-Mole, where we picked five random records and I talked about them. And one of those records was Frigid Pink, band from Detroit that had a hit with House of the Rising Sun. And my friend Lee made a comment on Facebook and he had a question mark, Frigid Pink. I know it's spelt weird, but you remember this song, Lee. Let's see if this rings a bell. House of the Rising Sun, Frigid Pinks, F-R-I-J-I-D. Frigid. Okay. Here we go.
You need a quarter?
Anyway, you remember House of the Rising Sun, Frigid Pink. But today, is that too loud? Alright. But today, we're going to do a 10 really cool live albums. 10 great live albums. 10 live albums that I like. So here we are. Without any further ado, live albums. Nothing more than getting somebody in front of a live audience. In the old days, back in Benny Goodman's day, they would record live. So Benny Goodman getting in front of a live audience, they pretty much did the same thing at Carnegie Hall that they would do in the studio. But being their jazz band, nothing's ever the same. And this concert at Carnegie Hall in 1938 was considered the birth of swing. Nice 6i Columbia Records issue from the 50s. It's like, I got two of these, Volume 1 and Volume 3. Benny Goodman. Fast forward several years, and the whole concept of live music kind of changes and how things are done. And one of the greatest live albums of all time is James Brown and the Famous Flames live at the Apollo. Now I really wanted to play for you the introduction that the MC at the Apollo does for this album, but unfortunately it is blocked and I can't get away with it. So we're not going to hear any of that. But this album, the way the audience interacts with James Brown is really quite, I don't want to say unique, but it's quite entertaining, and it's what makes this live album, besides all the good music and the genius of James Brown, it makes this album very entertaining and different than, say, just somebody playing their music live. I mean, James Brown and the audience, they interact. They're almost part of the show. Really great record on King. This is a black label King. Has a nice little picture of James Brown on the back. I've seen various different pressings of this. I don't know if this is how original this particular one is. But James Brown and the Famous Flames at the Apollo Theater in 1962. Came out in 1963. This album Cheep Thrills, Big Brother and the Holding Company on Columbia Records. This is only the second Big Brother album, but it features all original music, a couple covers, but all songs that they hadn't previously released, which to me, besides this is a really great album, kind of makes it a little different than a band just going out and playing the hits, so to speak. They didn't really have any hits at this point. Great album, of course, featuring Janis Joplin, which we'll see on the back here, and featuring the artwork of R. Crumb from underground magazines and whatnot. R. Crumb, he didn't like rock and roll music so much, or actually he didn't like it at all, but he was a great artist and he kind of fit in really well for the San Francisco scene. This is just a Columbia reissue, red with the yellow lettering. Now sometimes introductions, I wanted to play introductions to songs. I thought that might be something I could get away with. And this album, 1969's Kick Out the Jams by MC5. This is their debut album, and it's a live album, which I think is pretty unusual for a rock and roll band. It's not unheard of, but live album, I guess they figured these guys were already playing the Grandy Ballroom. They were big in Detroit. Lecture Records figured this will be cheap. I'll just get them to do a concert. We'll record it and we'll release it. So I want to play you the introduction to this because it's really something. If you hadn't heard it before, if you had heard it, it's always fun to hear it again. And I was looking up, I was trying to find out who actually did the introduction to this. Like in the James Brown, it was Lucas Fats Gonder was the MC that you didn't hear. And this, I don't know if this is Brother Jay Crawford, who's mentioned on the back of the album. I looked it up online and all they can tell me was it was inflammatory rhetoric. So this is how the introduction to MC5's Kick Out the Jams album and concert starts. Incidentally, this was on October 30th and 31st of 68. So if you recall political wise and what was going on in 1968, particularly up in that area, and the MC5, maybe to their detriment, were involved politically. So I'll let you hear that. There you go. Stomping, we all used to clap. Here we go.
Brothers and sisters, I want to see your hands up now. Let me see your hands. I want everybody to kick up some noise. I want to hear some revolution out there. I want to hear a little revolution. Brothers and sisters, the time has come for each and every one of you to decide whether you are going to be the problem or whether you are going to be the solution. That's right. You must choose, brothers. You must choose. It takes 5 seconds. 5 seconds of decision. 5 seconds to realize your purpose here on the planet. It takes 5 seconds to realize that it's time to move. It's time to get down with it. Brothers, it's time to testify, and I want to know, are you ready to testify? Are you ready? I give you a testimonial. The MC5.
Evelyn Rose. Lead vocals by Wayne Kramer, the guitar player. Of course, Rob Tyner was the lead vocalist for the MC5. But Wayne Kramer does the falsetto vocals for that. This is a reissue, by the way, on a English Electra, with a little butterfly cover. This is one of the edited versions. As you may know, Kick Out the Jams, the introduction to that particular song, which is the second song, involved a expletive that Elektra Records had a problem with. So what they did is they released one edited version and edited not only the Kick Out the Jams mother in the beginning, they changed it to brothers and sisters, but they also edited out all the writing on the inside, which was, I forget, I haven't read it in so long, but I'm sure it was inspired by John Sinclair and the White Panther Party that the MC5 were involved with at the time. But the Elektra Records issued two of them. They issued one that had the expletive, which they sold behind the counter at the record stores. And then they issued another one, this one, with the red Elektra label. I believe the other one had a gold label. I've seen them with the greenish gold Elektra label. But anyhow, Kick Out the Jams, big album, but unfortunately Elektra Records had some problems with MC5, or I should say the MC5 had some problems with Elektra Records. I mean, it wasn't like nobody ever cursed on Elektra Records before, you know, but for some reason, if you have a top 40 album, you can't be cursing. So speaking about cursing on Elektra Records, leads me to The Doors, absolutely live. My sister Donna bought me this record when I was a kid. It's the first Doors album I had. And what I want to play for you is, guess what? An introduction. And it's a really cool introduction of Jim Morrison introducing Ray Manzarek, who's going to sing the Willie Dixon song, Close to You. So, and if you recall, I don't know, this is 69, the album came out in 1970, but around that time, Jim Morrison was arrested in Miami for indecent exposure, and I think some of this is alluding to that incident. So let's see what Jim has to say as he's introducing Ray Manzarek singing Close to You.
You only get that treat on full moons.
Let me back up a little. Let me back up a lot. I always back up too much, Don. All right, Jim Morrison, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you realize it, but tonight you're in for a special treat. No, not that.
Not that.
You only get that treat on full moons. Besides, I know there are a lot of young people out there, and I wouldn't want anyone to faint or blush.
Here, what's he talking about?
The last time it happened, grown men were weeping. Policemen were turning in their badges.
Here we go.
Oh, I get it. Everyone was intimidated tonight by all the security precautions in
Ready?
Well, just remember, their motto is protect and serve.
Did you hear that? hard to make out on my little record player when I was 14 years old, and really hard to understand that since I had no idea what they were talking about or what was going on. But they actually had cops, like, in front of the band as they were playing. That's kind of trouble they expected to have at Doors concerts. That must have been something, huh? But, so Absolutely Live, The Doors, 1970 Elektra. Now this album's a little different. The Strawbs, just a collection of antiques and curios. I really wanted to get the Strawbs in here, since I really like the Strawbs a lot, and this is their live album. It's one of their earlier albums, the first of 2 albums they put out with Rick Wakeman on keyboards. And all original tunes, not on any previous albums. They just decided to put out a live album with whatever new songs they were working on at the time, I guess. And it's a pretty good album. Very quiet, low-key, not a lot of yelling going on in the audience. But just a collection of antiques and curios. Is the leader of the band, David Cousins, in the middle, and Rick Wakeman over there a couple of years before he joined Yes. There's some good Rick Wakeman piano and organ on this album, and some great David Cousins songs. The Strawbs, from England, 1970 on, A&M Records. This is a reissue A&M, white with the big A&M on it, not the brown A&M, like I'm going to show you on this next album, another English band, Humble Pie. Performance, they call this album. Humble Pie, Performance, Rocking the Fillmore East in this case. Oh, a little damage there. I don't even want to show you that the cover. But this is the last album, I believe, that Peter Frampton played on before he left to go solo. And incidentally, he put out probably the most successful live album of all time, Frampton Comes Alive, which part of that he recorded at the Long Island Arena, the Comac Arena in Long Island, New York. And I went to that concert. He opened for 10 years after, 1975. But this is on a A&M as well. And A&M had a brown label back in 1971, like that. And this one has, I guess, a special label. It's got a little picture of what appears to be the band from backstage looking out over a outdoor audience, which obviously was not from the Fillmore, which was downtown New York City. Which brings us back to audience participation. We'll go back across the pond to England, and I'll give you a little bit of Slade, Get Down, Get With It. Very similar sounds to some of the singing that you hear on that James Brown album. And I believe this song was kind of adapted from a Little Richard song of a similar name. I'm going to take you toward the end of the song. Now, if you don't know freaking Slade, they were huge in England. They had a really big following in England. They were from the Black Country, they called it. And they did have a strong following in the Midwest. And when they released their movie, I forgot I had this over here. They had a movie called Slade and Flame. It had to be subtitled to the Midwestern American fans to actually understand what they were saying. Kind of reminds me of the movie that I've been seeing these last couple of days. Been watching a lot of British movies, and I thought I could understand them, but I can't, in a lot of ways. But anyhow, so they got this. I think the Slade fan club together and invited them to a concert. I think that's how this concert was actually staged. So let's see what we got here. If I get you anywhere to where I want to be. The soothing voice of Noddy Holder. Let's have a good time right from the start. That's what it's all about, see? That's what Noddy would say. Great album. Follow-up to this was Sladist, I think was the name of the album. Had Mama, We're All Crazy Now. Kind of made some headway when I was young, and seemingly to me they disappeared after that, or couple albums after that, but meanwhile they're big out there in the Midwest, and of course always big in England. Band from America, from Boston, the J. Giles Band. This is their live album, Full House, on Atlantic Records. J. Giles Band became huge in the 80s, but they were a hard driving rock and roll band throughout most of the 70s. And what I wanted to, just a little clip, a little bit of the introduction to Whammer Jammer. J. Giles, probably one of the few rock and roll bands that I can think of that had a full-time harmonica player. And that full-time harmonica player was Magic Dick. Magic Dick. I should probably look up his real name. But here's a little introduction to Whammer Jammer, which is a harmonica showcase song. I'm just going to give you a little bit of Peter Wolf and Magic Dick at the beginning of the song. Here we go. Recorded in Detroit.
I said you gonna get crazy. I said you gonna move, get it all down, get it all night, get it all right, get it outside and get it down, baby. Yeah. Whammer jammer, let me hear you, nigga.
Whammer Jammer. You know, to have a front man like Peter Wolf makes a big difference on how good of a time you're going to have at a concert. I was doing my Boris Karloff show, and I kept calling Peter and the Wolf record Peter Wolf. I don't know, I was thinking ahead. I was thinking of J. Giles. But Peter and the Wolf obviously is something else. 1974, back to New York. Lou Reed, Rock and Roll Animal. Really great live album. Features Steve Hunter and Dick Wagner, who later played with Alice Cooper not long after this. But they did a couple albums with Lou Reed, and this album, they do some really great stuff, particularly on the introduction to Sweet Jane. So, Rock and Roll Animal, RCA Records. Lou Reed during his dark period. Oh wait, wasn't all his period dark? Well, it was darker then. RCA, this is a reissue. I got too many reissues for you today, I know. Should be like an orange label, probably, 1974. But won't be playing any of that, but although I'd like to. Some really great stuff on here: Heroin, White Light, White Heat, and Rock and Roll. Several Velvet Underground songs. Which takes us fast forward a couple of years back to England, Stiff Records. We're going to end with Stiff Records. Now, Stiff Records were an independent label, and they had Nick Lowe, Elvis Costello, Reckless Eric, Ian Dury, and the Blockheads, Larry Wallace are all on this album here. And this is a English import. And it's a live record they did, 1977. I guess came out in 78 in the States. This is a made in England, Stiff Records. I want to play you the introduction to I Knew the Bride When She Used to Rock and Roll, which is a Nick Lowe song that you might have heard Dave Edmunds do. This is the Nick Lowe and Slade Chicken, I believe is what he was calling his band at that time. Nick Lowe, oh no, Last Chicken in the Shop. Now how's that for a name of a band? Nick Lowe's Last Chicken in the Shop.
Meaty.
So here we are.
Very
just
meaty.
A bar in England somewhere. Some really great stuff on this.
Good evening, London. How you doing? You feel alright? Are you ready for a good time? Are you ready for some stiff music? Come on, it's time to leave the bar. Everybody down the front. Buy your drinks later on. Well, we'll get the show underway now with the one and only Nick Lowe's. Let's set it. Go! It's called I Knew the Bride When She Used to Rock.
That's a song about a guy's friend, this girl he knows from the neighborhood, used to be a hard partier and whatever, and she's getting married to some respectable guy that's got a good job. Hey, that's great. My friend Jay introduced me to this album. He had a colored vinyl version, I think it was yellow. And if not for him, I might have missed all the music from the late 70s, early 80s, you know, because I was living in the past. I was trying to catch up with all the stuff that I missed. But thanks to my great dear friend Jay, he introduced me to a lot of music of that time, and this live Stiff album was one of them. Elvis Costello, Nick Lowe, just some great stuff. So anyway, that's my live albums. That's it's not all, maybe not even the most live albums that I would normally play, but some of them are. And it's a lot of live albums, but I think these that I mentioned had, you know, something different about them, more of interaction with the audience, either that or different songs than the band would normally play. If you got any ideas on some live albums that you'd like to hear, or that you thought I should have played, or just you want to tell me about your favorite live album, tell me. That would be great. I'm very interested. Because, hey, it's rock and roll. Or it's jazz. Or it's blues. I don't care. It's good music, and that's what it's all about. Good music. And good vinyl. So, if you like this, please, share it. Make some comments. If you didn't like it, share it anyway. What the hell? And it's been my pleasure spending this time with you. So let's just listen to a little bit of this and I'll send you off. Later, man. Move it.